quiet, numbskulls. I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
Hey, we're back in the studio. Once again, you're listening to this edition of the business side of music. Met this gentleman some months back at a Dinner with Dreamers event. Buddy of mine, Jonathan Pushkar, brought him to the event and got a chance to chat with him. Found out he's an author of the book, The Amazing Adventures of a Marginally Successful Musician. We're going to talk about that along with some other projects that he's working on. Bill Cinque is in the studio. Welcome.
Thank you for having me here. It was I got stuck in some traffic coming downstairs to the studio, but other than that, it went pretty well.
So that's what the holdup was.
I was upstairs.
Let's get started with the one question I always like to ask. How'd you get started in the business?
I got started in the business essentially watching my older brother, who was a musician. He was the first musician I ever met. I never really saw him play when I was younger because I was too young. He was 11 years older than I am. But I knew about him going out and doing gigs. I knew about him rehearsing. I would watch him sitting, playing the guitar or playing the drums and teaching himself and learning songs. And I thought, wow, this is great. When I got old enough, I graduated high school and just jumped into a small band and have been working ever since.
No real musical experience leading up to that other than just watching your brother. Was your family musically inclined?
Not particularly. I, like most other people my age, I'm now 61. Like most people my age, I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan on television, and that just, that changed the world for everybody. When I got old enough to play in bars, when I turned 19, I joined a band, and they said, it was a duo, an acoustic duo, and my friend said, do you sing? And I said, sure. And I didn't sing at all. I didn't even think about it, but I just jumped in, and that was kind of the beginning of the end. I mean, there was nothing else for me to do. I knew the first time I sat in front of a microphone, this is all I ever want to do. I knew what I wanted to do when I was 4 years old. I tell people that all the time.
You joined a band playing bass?
No, playing guitar. I started playing guitar and singing at the same time at that first gig, essentially.
And you were how old?
I was, I guess, 19. I kind of tinkered around on the guitar a little bit, and I figured I could sing, but I never did it. My friend Tom said, hey, I'm doing this gig at this little bar. We do a bunch of Beatles songs. I said, yeah, I love the Beatles. And he said, well, we also do, this is again 1976, Loggins and Messina and Cat Stevens and Neil Young. I said, yeah, I love that stuff. And he said, oh yeah, do you sing? I said, sure. Our first gig with him, and my first paying gig, as I talk about in the book, we made $25 and played to about 30 of our friends and family who came, sat on each other's shoulders in this tiny little place you couldn't move.
Right.
And I just said, this is the greatest thing in the world. They paid me $25. I would do this for free.
You'd do it for free.
I really would.
Yeah.
And, that seems to be the undercurrent of all my funny little stories. It's, I get goofy about it and I tell the funniest things that happen, but the bare bones of it is, it's the greatest job in the world, and I can't believe sometimes that I get paid to do it.
In this business, and we have this conversation quite a bit because we tell people you don't get in this to make money. If you make money, you're lucky.
Yeah.
But you get in it because you love it. You're passionate about it.
Right.
Was that just how you felt when you first started?
Absolutely. I was the guy. It's interesting when I think about this. When everybody else talks about their musical experience, they talk about their time on stage, they talk about the song they wrote, however they go about telling their story. I was the guy who bought all the equipment because the other guys couldn't afford it. Now, I couldn't afford it either, right? But I bought it. I was the guy who packed it in my car. I worked with a drummer for years who didn't drive, and I would drive him home and then drive a half hour back to my house. I would load his drums up to my second-story apartment by myself. I was the guy who did all the booking. I was the guy who made the flyers. back when you were making paper flyers
Right.
before there was email. So way outside, what I call the frets and the strings and all that, the nuts and bolts of the music, I was the guy who was running around doing everything I could do. So I loved every second of it. And I really saw the entire picture of this is what we're going to have to do to make $25. And I just did everything I could possibly do to make that happen.
You wore all the hats.
I really did.
Yeah.
I really did.
I get it. And you weren't formally educated in music. You mentioned in the book that you can read and you can write, but it's in the simplest of terms.
Yeah, I never took a lesson of any kind. When I say in the simplest terms, I wanted to make this really clear. If you have any idea what a lead sheet is, where if you have a lyric that says happy birthday to you, and over it, it'll say E, B, like that. That's about it. Any kind of transcription, I have no idea what it is. Any kind of notation, I have no idea what it is. Even if the simple chord chart is moving too fast, I'm much better off playing by ear. So what I do is I just listen and I follow. I can follow a piano player, I can follow a guitar player, but no formal education whatsoever.
Is that something that came naturally for you?
I would say yes, but when you get to things like technique, I'm not sure that anything comes too naturally. There are guys that are natural basketball players, but you still have to coach them along the way kind of thing. So what I did notice is bass was much more natural to me than guitar was. Bass just seemed to resonate with me on a different level.
How quickly did you transition over from guitar to bass?
Well, you're asking really very poignant questions here, because when you said, how did you get into it? I said, I kind of fell into it. I told this guy I sing when I didn't sing, and I don't really know these songs. And you said, well, you have no formal education. That's right. And then how quick did I make the transition to playing bass? I was in a working band. And the band was good, and we were in a club band in Westchester, New York, which is just north of New York City. This one particular night, we just did like a duo or something, and it went very well. And we were playing at this little college, and the next day, the agent said to me, hey, you know what? You guys did such a great job last night. They called us and said you guys were great. I said, wow, that's always good to hear. I mean, it's just a client saying you did a good job. I didn't think there was any more to be said about it. And the booking agent says to me, well, your buddy Steve, who you played with last night, his band could really use you. And I said, wow, that's great, because these guys, I know them, they're buddies of mine, and they work, and they sound fantastic, and they do good gigs. I'd be honored. We have this conversation for about, a full 5 minutes. Well, these are the dates, these are the kind of clubs, here's the song list. We're going to have to rehearse once a week, and I'm saying that great. And the very last thing the agent says, and this sounds like a script from some romantic comedy or something, says, well, Bill, this is fantastic. You're the new bass player. And we walked out the door together, and I said, Steve, I don't play bass. And Steve said, I know, but, he wanted you in the band so bad because he really likes your voice and you're a good guy. And I was not about to be the one to tell him you don't play bass. So I literally got a gig playing bass without being a bass player. And for quite a while, I'm going to say 6 months, I was the worst singing bass player. I don't know how I ever kept the gig. I was learning on the job, and it's a very difficult job. But that's what I do for a living now.
But bass players, there's not as many of them around as there are guitar players.
And certainly not singing bass players.
Singing bass players,
yeah.
Right, yeah.
And I learned the hard way. And that is a true story. The one thing I have to say about my goofy little stories is they're long, and they're silly, and they're kooky. I promise you, I'm not exaggerating any of these. I literally walked out of that booking agency with essentially a very steady gig as a singing bass player, even though I didn't even own a bass.
Didn't even own a bass. No.
Had to go get one. Had to borrow a friend of mine's. A friend of mine had a bass, which gets into another thing because I play left-handed and upside down, which means I pick with my left hand, but the thick string is on the bottom. So if you're a guitar player, whether you play left-handed or right-handed, the thick string's on the top, the thin string's on the bottom. That's the best way to say it. I'm left-handed with the low E string on the bottom, so I borrowed a right-handed bass and just flipped it upside down and played it, and it was incredibly awkward. The jack is in the way, the controls are on the wrong side. Everything about it was horrible.
I hadn't even thought about that. That's right.
Yeah, I don't ever want to think about it again. I thought about it too much. It gave me nightmares for about 4 years. But so that was my transition, and it was kind of the jump in head first, see what happens.
We're going to take a break, get a word in for our sponsors, but that's one of the things I want to talk about when we come back. You told the story how you've jumped in on things so many times, including how you got to work with some great artists, from what I remember you telling us. We're going to dig into that a little more, along with your book, The Amazing Adventures of a Marginally Successful Musician. In the studio with us here, Bill Cinque, and you're listening to this edition of...
Hey, this is Rich Redmond, and you're listening to The Business Side of Music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Hey, it's Chris SD from Cinque Songwriter. Imagine what it would be like getting your music into the latest TV shows, movies, or ads. Your songs would not only get exposure in front of millions of viewers, you'd get paid to do it and gain a reputation as the songwriter that you are. I've been showing songwriters, composers, and artists how to get their music into TV and film for over 15 years. Collectively, they have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars from licensing their music. Their music has been on networks such as HBO, Bravo, ABC, NBC, Netflix, and more. In films or trailers such as Predator, Annihilation, Christmas Chronicles, Professor Mac, and many others. So many songwriters upload their music to websites hoping to get discovered. Unfortunately, this almost never happens with the millions of songs out there competing for attention. I show you how to get your music heard by the people who can actually make it happen for you. When you start getting your music licensed, you automatically develop a reputation in the industry. This lets you get syncs over and over again. If you'd like to discover how to connect with the right people in music licensing, just click the Cinque Songwriter logo on the Business Side of Music webpage, and I'll see you there.
Hi everyone, I'm Larry Butler, and I want to send you a free digital copy of my new book, The Singer-Songwriter Rulebook, 101 Ways to Help You Improve Your Chances of Success. That's right, everything you need to know to launch your career as a singer-songwriter, all based on my 40 years in the live performance arena, and believe me, I've seen it all. In my book, you'll find the 10 things you have to deal with before even thinking about becoming a singer-songwriter performer. You'll also learn about the 5 things every singer-songwriter can do this weekend to make their live show better. 5 things I can guarantee that you are not doing already. Plus, there's tips on songwriting and staging, photo and video shoots, publishing, merch, dozens of other topics. All written for people who don't particularly like to read. And again, it's free. Just go to the Business Side of Music website homepage and look for my book cover. Click on it, and a free digital copy of my book will be yours. I'm Larry Butler, and I approve of this message. Thanks.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee with Bill Cinque, singer, bassist in the studio with us here, along with being an author, The Amazing Adventures of a Marginally Successful Musician. So when I first got this book and had the chance to look at it, I realized you have probably written more chapters than most people. And I love some of the chapter titles. I think it's great. Of course, you talk about your worst gig, talk about the record deal, you talk about a lot of different subjects that you wouldn't find in most books like this.
That's an understatement, yes.
We're going to talk about that, but let's go back a little bit. You moved from New York to L.A. at some point in your career.
Yes.
That led up to some great gigs, got to play with some great artists. Was that another one of those, I'm going to jump in feet first in this thing? And
yeah, I was very, very lucky. I got my first gig, my first paying gig in Los Angeles, I think 72 hours after I moved to L.A.
Did you just drive from New York to L.A.? Did you have work lined up, or you just said, I'm just going to do this?
No, didn't know anybody out here, nothing. I actually made a brief stop in Alabama. I lived down in Alabama for a couple of months and managed to work down there, which I don't want to give away too much of the book, but I chronicle some of that in the book where I walked into a music store where the cashier was yelling at me saying, I don't know why you even bothered walking in here. There's no work down here. There's no music happening down here. And as I'm arguing with this guy, a guy taps me on the shoulder and says, did I hear you say you're a singing bass player? Because we're in a band that we're firing our bass player. We'll be back on Monday. And I auditioned for them and got the gig before I lived there. And that's another one of these things. You couldn't make it up. But I went from Alabama, yes, literally drove out, stayed with some friends for a couple of weeks until I found an apartment in Hollywood. but I got an audition. I came out here on a Thursday, got an audition where 24 hours later, less than 24 hours later, and I didn't even have my amp yet because my stuff hadn't been shipped. I had to rent an amp on Sunset Boulevard, go up and audition someplace in the San Fernando Valley, which is, 20 miles north of Hollywood, started playing, and then the opportunity came up to play with kind of like the third circle out of some of the British invasion bands. And what I mean by that is, God love some of those great bands that they fractured, they splintered, they broke up, they got back together again. Some of the guys retired. Unfortunately, some of the guys are no longer with us. So there would be one member of the Hollies, and I played with him. There'd be a guy who used to be with the Bay City Rollers. I played with them. Honestly, I loved all of it. And then that circle just kind of tightened up, and I started playing, again, I'm appealing to some of the older folks now, but the British invasion guys from the 60s, suddenly it turned into, I'm playing with Chad and Jeremy and the Tremolos, and one of my favorites of all time, I got to do 2 tours with Jerry and the Pacemakers. If for anybody who remembers them, Don't Let the Sun Catch You Crying was a big hit. Another huge hit was Ferry Cross the Mersey, was their big song. I got to play with them, and that was just the greatest thing ever. That evolved into even bigger gigs, which I never saw coming.
Do you think it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time?
I will never, ever underappreciate luck or good fortune or the universe, whatever terminology you want to use. I was prepared. I was really prepared. I have always taken that attitude of, I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a bag packed. If you need me to hit the road, I'm out the door in 15 minutes. There won't be any long discussion. There won't be any contract negotiations here. If the right gig comes up, I'm ready to go. And I think it was more that because I really knew that I was never going to be the guy who was guilty of the woulda, coulda, shoulda. I was going to go for it. If I crash and burn, then so be it. If I audition and they hate me and they throw me out the door, so be it. But I'm doing the audition. I'm sending in my demo tape when we used to do cassettes. I'm the one who drives 40 miles in the rain because I wanted to be there for that open mic night when a lot of other guys didn't do it. So I was prepared and I was ready to rock. So I will accept the fact that there was good fortune on my side, but I don't mind saying I made a lot of my own breaks,
At the same time, I remember you talking about it at the Dinner with Dreamers, and this is a story that really struck close to me, and that was right before Neil Diamond. You weren't in the best place in your life.
Yes, that would be such a good way to say it, Bob. What an excellent choice of words. Was not in the best place in my life. Not professionally, not spiritually, not personally. I had about the worst run of luck. I will speak to my audience, your audience here, because we're all family, right? That's what we're here for.
Absolutely.
We're not here to nip and tuck things and make things look and sound pretty. The reality was this. I had a long-term relationship fall apart, a personal relationship. I had a pretty good gig that just ended abruptly. I had I was actually like a consultant to a music company, and it was a good job. I liked it, and I was involved in the creative part and everything, so it was great. Within, I guess, 60 days, the relationship, the road gig, the consultant gig, all disappeared. And I was looking into the abyss. And at that time, I was 54 years old. So it wasn't like I was 25 and I could start all over. I remember these 2 great friends of mine, these 2 women. I wasn't dating them. They were just great friends of mine. It's a good thing I wasn't dating them, because that way we could actually be friends and talk about stuff. Yeah. So I walked in the door to their apartment. They wanted to go out to dinner, and they said, what's wrong? We can see it in your face. I walked in the door. I said, you're not going to believe it. I just lost the gig. The gig just ended. And they both were sitting on the couch. They both jumped up with their arms out to give me a hug and say, oh, I'm so sorry. And this is what I did. I don't want to clap too close to the microphone. They went, oh, I'm so sorry. And I went, nope, watch me work. That's what I said. I have no idea why I said that. I've never said that before. And they said, what are you talking about? I said, let's go out. Let's have dinner. It's on me. They said, but you're broke now. You just, your whole life's falling apart and you just lost the only gig. I said, nope, this is temporary. I'm going to turn this around. Let's go out. You pick the restaurant. Let's go have a steak dinner. I'm all in on this. And I was talking like this. I had a whole different energy. I don't know what came over me. From that moment, if I were to be, I'll be as specific as I can be. This would have been February of 2013. And by July of 2013, I had become the executive producer of a television show. We pitched a television show and actually got it on air. It wasn't shown in the United States, but it was in 23 countries. We did 2 seasons. The next year, I was asked to be the musical director for the British Invasion tour, which was Denny Laine from Wings was Paul McCartney's guitar player, who I love Denny. If Denny's listening, I've done 100 gigs with Denny. I hope to do more. Peter Asher from Peter and Gordon. Peter Asher I've been Peter's bass player for 15 years. Among other things, he produced and managed James Taylor and Linda Ronstadt. Not that you would have to do anything else, but...
And hung out with John and Paul and George and Ringo, too, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I forgot about that little episode of his life where he was the A&R director at Apple Records. So it was all these great stars. The Searchers were on this tour. It was great, all the 60s stuff. I did that. So obviously, I was on a roll for a year. I came home on September 22nd, 2014, and got a phone call that changed my life.
And leading up to that phone call, you went to an event. I think you said you went to an event at Pepperdine.
Actually, it was at Cal Arts.
Cal Arts.
Yes.
And you couldn't take your phone into the room, or...
Yeah. This story, I've told this, probably tell this story twice a week to somebody. I've told it on camera and on air, and I will try to truncate it without making it
I think it's a great
long.
Story. No, go for it.
Well, it encompasses a lot. It encompasses, I guess, when you think of having the patience of Job, and those kind of things where you've been through so much and then things start to go well. Sometimes when things are going well, you're almost waiting for the other shoe to drop. I don't want to trust this situation because things are going well. It's almost like sitting at the blackjack table. If I win 3 hands, I'm probably going to stop and walk away because I don't want to lose the next one, and lose the whole thing. So keeping that kind of mentality, things were going well. And this particular day, I get home from this tour. It was about a 3-week tour with the British Invasion bands. We had a core band of 4 of us playing with all these great artists. So the whole show was just nothing but hits. It was the greatest time I've ever had. I come home that day, and to try to make the story somewhat shorter than I have told it before, I had just gotten off a plane, and my ears were clogged up, and this school, which is I know exactly where it is. It's pretty much in my neighborhood. I was going there to see like a symposium on the music business. As many times as I've told this story, the only way I can say it is I could not find this school. I don't mean a storefront or an address. I mean a campus.
And you knew where it was at.
I knew exactly where it was. I drove past it twice a day, and I still cannot explain why I couldn't find it. So if you can ask me the same question 5 different ways, my answer is still going to be, I don't know. Temporary insanity, I'll call it whatever you want. But I was driving around for about 20 minutes and couldn't find it. And this is the part that gets a little on the, maybe on the spiritual side, and some people... I'm okay with however you read into this, and if you want to judge me, that's okay too. I was getting so frustrated, I pulled into a parking space in this mall, and I pushed my seat back, and I just looked up to the sky, and I said, talking to my dad, who had passed at that point 25 years before that, and I said, okay, Dad, what's the takeaway here? This has got to be a teaching moment. This is so absurd. I can't believe that there's not going to be a silver lining. There's got to be a teaching moment. So I said these words out loud. I said, okay, Dad, what's the takeaway? I sat there for a second. I started the car again. I pulled out of the parking space. Now, if you can just kind of visualize this, if you pulled out kind of into the street, my phone rings, and the combination of me still having my ears popping from the plane that I got off a couple of hours ago, and the Bluetooth thing is falling out of my ear, and I'm lost and I'm frustrated anyway. This guy starts talking to me and I don't know what he's saying. I pretty much pulled back into the same space I just pulled out of. I put the earpiece back in and I said, look, I'm really sorry. I'm having a tough day. Whoever this is, can you start the conversation over again? And this voice at the other end of the phone says, sure. So my name is Sam. And as I was saying, and I have to underline that because his phrase was, as I was saying, but I hadn't heard what he was saying because it fell out, the earpiece fell out. He said, well, as I was saying, we're looking for a bass player and you come very highly recommended. And I said, great, Sam. What's the name of the band? And his answer is with kind of a pregnant pause, because he had already said this. So what's the name of the band? He said, Neil Diamond. Now, the joke here is I was waiting for the word tribute, right? That's a Neil Diamond tribute. I've told this story almost word for word because it's been 5 years now, and I remember it almost word for word. I remember him kind of thinking, I'm kind of hearing what he's thinking. Sam's like, well, what do you mean, what band? I just told you, and how many Neil Diamonds are there, So I said, oh, okay. So he said, look, if you're available this week, we'd love to talk to you. I said, great. Well, here's where I'll cut out a lot of the back and forth. This was about 4:15 in the afternoon, Los Angeles time. In the next 4 hours, Sam called me, I think it was 5 or 6 times, and it kept going to this kind of a conversation. Hey, Bill, this is Sam. Listen, I'm really sorry to bother you again. Are you open this day? Hey, can you make it at 8 o'clock? Can you make it at 9 o'clock on this day? Can you make it at... The last conversation he has with me is this. It's about 9 o'clock at night. And he said, Bill, listen, this is Sam. I know this is kind of crazy. It's a little out of the ordinary. Is it possible that you can come in tomorrow and audition? Just come in cold. I know normally we would send you charts and we would send you CDs. We try to be as prepared as we can around here. He said, but this is just extraordinary circumstances. Is it possible that you can come in tomorrow at 3 o'clock? And me being me, I said, sure, Sam. I'm a New York Italian. This stuff doesn't scare me. So he said, well, that sounds great. The next day, I go down there having really no chance of getting this gig in my mind. Again, I don't read music. I play upside down and left-handed. I'm more of a singer than anything else. Turns out they don't need anybody singing. They have 2 of the greatest background singers in the world who I would love to give a shout out to. My great, great friends, Julia and Maxine Waters, the Waters sisters. They don't need me to sing. They just need a bass player. There's no chance of me getting this gig. So I went down there. I was completely loose, right? I had nothing to lose. There's no way I'm going to get this gig. I'll just audition. Maybe they'll keep my name for something. I did 2 songs. They said, can you hang out for a minute? I said, okay. They said, come on in. As I walked in from the main room, I was by myself, just with tracks, no band. I walked from the live room into the recording desk. As I walked in this door, the other door opens, and this guy walks in and says, hi, Bill, I'm Neil. I said, yeah, I know. I actually said that. I said, yeah, I know. And he said, well, let's give this a listen. They recorded it. He listened back, asked me a couple of questions. I honestly gave him my book because I thought I'm never going to see this guy again. Maybe he'll call me and say, hey, I like your book, But I was not. The idea of having the gig never crossed my mind. It really didn't. And I'm pretty cocky. I don't lack confidence. But in that situation, it just seemed like this was far beyond my reach. I walked in that door at exactly 3 o'clock, 3:00. I walked out at 3:40. That was including 10 minutes of talking to the engineer beforehand, being in the room for 20 minutes and 10 minutes talking to Neil afterwards, or whatever the math would be there. 40 minutes I was in my car. At about 6:30, I get back to my little apartment in the Valley in Los Angeles. I'm with my girlfriend and her daughter. The phone rings, and it's Sam. And Sam starts out by saying, listen, we really appreciate you coming down here on short notice. And I'm thinking, this is just not good news. And the next sentence out of his mouth was, Neil absolutely loved what he heard and wanted me to invite you to come on our promotional tour.
Wow.
And I said, when is that? And they said, we leave Sunday. And this was Wednesday night.
And you had how many songs to learn?
For that, I had, they lied to me a little bit. I think the way it came about was we were doing a short set of 9 songs. Now the story is moving on to past the gig. Is that okay?
Yeah, no.
All right, so
fine.
What happened was this. I think it might have been a Tuesday night. I auditioned on Wednesday, came back on Thursday, got measured for my shirt, filled out a couple of tax forms, and rehearsed with the guitar player for about 2 hours or 3 hours. And they said, do you want to come back tomorrow for Friday? And the guitar player said, no, he feels pretty good. We're good.
Without asking you?
No, but that was okay. So here comes Sunday. We got on a plane and go to New York, and our first gig was kind of a surprise gig, a place called Erasmus Hall High School, which was Neil's high school, also Barbra Streisand's high school, and a bunch of other famous people. But we did one of those, what they call a pop-up gig. Even though it was not advertised and it was kind of a secret, I think there was 600 people inside. I think there were 3,000 people outside.
Wow.
Because you're in Brooklyn, and he's the Brooklyn guy.
Yeah.
So this was my first gig. So we get in there Sunday to do the rehearsal and the sound check. And I'm trying not to be too nervous, and I don't even know the guys in the band. I don't even know their names. Neil comes over and says, all right, here's the set list. And you know what? What if we do these other 2 songs, whatever they were? And he says, and the manager guys, one of the guys on the management team says, I don't know if Bill knows those. And I said, do you have a chart? Now, what I meant was, because I don't read, the simple chart. Here I am, the new guy, the young guy. I don't know what's going on with any of this. They don't know my name. I don't know who's the road manager. I don't know who the makeup girl is. I don't know anything. I just tried to learn these 8 songs. And they said, oh, we're going to throw 2 or 3 more at you. And I said, oh, do you have a chart or a CD or anything? And here is Neil Diamond, the Neil Diamond, sitting next to me, jumps up and says, whoa, Billy, what's the deal? Hey, you're the guy who knows every song. You don't need charts. You don't need CDs. Now, the first time we get a little bit of a crunch, you're asking me for CDs and charts. And what kind of guy are you? You told me it was all... He's busting my chops, essentially, as they say. He's giving me a hard time like we're old friends, and I just met him. So I said, okay, I'm going to be comfortable here. So I got through that. 3 days later, something similar. We did something for iHeartRadio, and we did a live show. He said, oh, let's add these other couple of songs. And over the overhead, the sound man guy says, I don't think the new guy knows those songs. Neil, we never rehearsed that. And Neil walks over to me and like a bro, not like a dad or a musical director, kind of like puts his arm around me and says, hey, Billy, a couple of songs, you're okay going back to the hotel and learning them on your own? And I just said, sure. And Neil grabs the mic and says, he's going to be fine. We're good. So it was an amazing amount of faith that he put in me. I mean, here's the most legendary singer-songwriter of all time. These songs are his children. You would think he would be the guy to say, forget it, let's not even try it with the new guy. And he leaned over and kind of slapped me on the shoulder and said, yeah, he'll be fine. He'll do a good job. And I thought, wow, this makes me feel great. He trusts me with everything. That was before we even left New York. That was before anything else happened. And it was an incredible ride.
We're going to take another break, get in another word for our sponsors. Then we're going to come back and talk about your book for a few minutes and some other projects that you're working on now. You got some other stuff going on.
A whole bunch of stuff.
Good. In the studio with us today, Bill Cinque, singer, bassist, and author of The Amazing Adventures of a Marginally Successful Musician. I know a lot of us can relate to that. And you're listening to this edition of...
This is Claire Ratliff with Laughing Penguin Publicity, and you're listening to the business side of music.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Wow, I just joined the Music Starts Here community. This is a truly hidden gem for anyone in the music business. Whether you live in Nashville or anywhere else in the world, Music Starts Here is like a GPS for your music career. This is the place to be if you want to get advice and direction from some seriously talented musical people who have been where you want to go. Music news, events, and a great big community with resources for artists, songwriters, musicians, studio and tech, along with music business advice from pros in the industry, all on one site? Make sure you get your free profile now. Go to www.musicstartshere.org. That's musicstartshere.org.
Hi, this is Vinny Rebus, the founder of Indie Connect. Our goal is to ensure that you have the knowledge, the tools, skills, resources, and connections that you need to develop a profitable and long-lasting career in music. One way we do this is through these Business Side of Music podcasts. I'd also like to invite you to check out Indie Connect magazine, our free multimedia online publication packed with practical interviews and advice from music industry experts. Go to www.indieconnectmag. That's www.indieconnectmag.com. Let us walk with you and guide you every step of your musical journey.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, with singer, bassist, or maybe it's bassist singer. I don't know, whichever way you like to go.
Bassless singer.
Bassless singer. And author of The Amazing Adventures of a Marginally Successful Musician. Bill Cinque is here with us. Your book, when did the book come out?
The book came out several years ago. I revised it a couple of times. I am adding some chapters. I'm not really doing a sequel, but I'm adding some chapters in kind of an interesting way in another project that I'm doing, and I will talk about that in a minute. But the book has been out for a few years. It is really, it's my life's work, and I'm very proud of it. It took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get it done. I was up at 6 o'clock in the morning writing frantically for months at a time, and I loved every second of it. I truly loved every aspect of writing and putting the book together.
And it covers pretty much your entire career, I would think, up until that point that it was published.
It did, up until right before Neil. Oddly enough, this all happened right before Neil. When I first joined the band, Neil Diamond picked up a copy of my book at his birthday party. We all said, "Come on, Neil, make a wish." We had a cake for him, and Neil said, "Well, most of my wishes came true, so if you need me to make a birthday wish," and he held up my book and said, "I hope that Bill's book goes on the bestseller list. That's my birthday wish."
Wow.
That hasn't quite happened yet, but the elements were there.
Well, if enough people buy it.
That's the way I look at it.
So in writing the book, you covered a lot of different aspects of the business. You've done a lot of things. Mm-hmm. You've worn many different hats. Is there a most memorable time in your career, doing something that you were happier than any other time? Or
at the risk of sounding incredibly Pollyanna, I have had so many great times. I have had so many. It's almost like I'm in a contest of one-upsmanship with myself. I write in the book that I once did a gig when I was 19 with my first band. It was three of us, 3 19-year-old guys playing in an all-girls college. One of the greatest gigs of my life. I couldn't deny it. I went on, and a few years later with, again, Peter Asher and Peter and Gordon Waller, who sadly left us 10 years ago this week. But I played Carnegie Hall with Peter and Gordon, and that in and of itself is, a tremendous thing. But I'm a New Yorker. I used to drive past Carnegie Hall. I used to stare out the window thinking, will I ever play Carnegie Hall? When I played Carnegie Hall, I was with a 4-piece band, and I guarantee you the other 3 guys did not get out of it what I got out of it. That was a highlight. When I first heard a song I wrote on television, I wrote a lot of songs for television. I still do some of it, not as much as I used to, but...
Because you have over 200 songs that have been on TV and film.
Yeah. Actually, there's 2 phrases that we should be aware of when we're talking about music for television or film. One is a song, and the other is a placement. So if you had 10 placements, you could have one song that had 10 placements. I've been pretty lucky. I lost count. It's probably, maybe 600 placements or something, multiple uses of one song. The first time I heard a song, I was overwhelmed, The first time I got a royalty check, I can't swear to it. It might have been $37. And I really, truly remember thinking, you know what? I've worked really hard in my life for $37. I mean, again, I have to mention, I'm 61 years old. When I was 17, minimum wage was $2 an hour or something. To take home $37, you had to do a whole lot of work. I was working in a grocery store, stacking oranges or throwing out the garbage or mopping the floor and all that stuff. I worked really hard for $37. And here I am with a song in the background on The Young and the Restless, and I get a check, and then obviously I've gotten bigger checks since then. But I remember opening up that envelope saying, this is incredible. So I've had so many, oh my goodness, last month was great, but this is fantastic. Oh, that other gig was great, but this one's even better. And in the last couple of years, I've had some pretty darn good gigs.
Have you set a bar? Did you ever set a goal and say, I want to, Carnegie Hall is a good example. I remember as a kid listening to Chicago's Live at Carnegie Hall, going, guys, someday I just want to go there, you know, and just see it. And the closest I got to it was Carnegie Deli across the street.
Exactly.
But I went, oh, there's Carnegie Hall. That's great as I'm eating my pastrami on rye. But did you set goals and work to achieve them, or did things just was it serendipity and things just kind of fell into place and you went, yeah, this is cool, I can check this off my list?
It's hard to say setting goals or setting a bar, because I think anytime you're in any form of entertainment, you're basically a dreamer, right?
You have to be.
Yes, you can't possibly, I don't think anybody picks up a guitar and expects to make $1 million, but we all hope to make $1 million, or sell 1 million records, or play Carnegie Hall, or be on The Tonight Show, or whatever the case is. These are the kind of questions that they're a bit puzzling, because do you set the bar? Yeah. When my head hits the pillow, I set all kinds of bars. The next day, when I talk to the other members of the band, then I say, hey, I know we're only playing Bob's Cafe tonight, but I'm thinking we're going to Carnegie Hall. The other 3 guys say, are you out of your mind? We're not going anyplace, you know? So you do have one foot in each world when you do this for a living. And that goes for musicians or producers or writers or actors. You do have to dream. So the idea of setting a bar, you sometimes keep it to yourself. You don't publicize it too much. But yes, I'm sure I did set some bars. One of them was Madison Square Garden.
Did you get there?
Yeah, I did.
It's a nice bar to set.
Oh, my goodness. I will say this, and I know I get a little bit of an impish grin on my face when I say this because I'm simultaneously being full of pride and being embarrassed, because the two places in my life that have always held just the ultimate thing for me have been Madison Square Garden and the Hollywood Bowl. And the reason I say that is there are bigger places, there are places that hold more people, and on, but I'm a New Yorker. My first experience in the arena was when I was 5 years old and I went to the circus. They used to have the circus at Madison Square Garden. Some years later, when I was in 6th grade, I went and saw the New York Knicks. That was the year they won the championship. I fell in love with basketball that minute. Being at the Madison Square Garden with the Knicks playing basketball with 20,000 people going crazy, it's indescribable. My first concert was seeing Bad Company at Madison Square Garden. So Madison Square Garden was always this thing, this elusive. It wasn't a building. It was a concept. You know, right. It was more than reality. It was bigger than reality.
It was a monument, fill in the blank.
Yes, it was everything. It was the top of the heap. So Madison Square Garden was one. The other one, in a different way, the Hollywood Bowl. What was the name of that band from Liverpool?
Oh, the Quarrymen.
That was them.
Yeah.
There was that, but there was also, when I was, I guess, in high school, of all things, Chuck Mangione, if you remember him, he was a
I do.
He had Live from the Hollywood Bowl, and I remember having his album, the vinyl, where it opened up and they showed pictures of the beautiful Hollywood Bowl in Southern California with this sunshine and the palm trees. And I thought, oh, if you play there, you must be doing something right. You know, there was this element of, again, maybe there were bigger places and newer places and nicer places, but the Hollywood Bowl just always held this magic. I had never been to California then. So here I am being in my late 50s, and all the dreams that may have evaporated for other people, here I am. When I say living the dream, it was not at all tongue-in-cheek or it wasn't watered down. This was, oh my goodness, I'm playing the Hollywood Bowl and I'm playing in Madison Square Garden. And I remember both of those gigs being me saying, I just cannot be too cool. This is exciting. This is not just another night. We've played a lot of great places and done a lot of great things, but this is spectacular.
I get it. When I was on the road and we played at the Greek Theater, it was the same thing.
Oh, absolutely.
I just went, oh my gosh, how many acts have played at the Greek Theater that were kind of that same hallowed ground almost?
Yeah,
I get it.
It's an entirely different environment in my head. You know, in my head, you can't go any higher than this. So it was a great time.
You're working on a new project?
I am, under the watchful eye of our good friend Jonathan Pushkar, who's helping me put the whole thing together. It's really very exciting for me. It's essentially based largely on what you and I are talking about now. It's my book and my life and these kind of conversations. I wanted to put together a video package. And the idea would be that musicians, maybe wannabe musicians, maybe part-time musicians, or even a seasoned pro, could access my videos online. And my educational videos, if we want to call it that for lack of a better term, would be me speaking like me, not me trying to sound like a professor. I wanted to kind of give people a little bit better understanding of what it takes to be a working musician, and essentially fill in the blanks for all the stuff that they did not teach you in traditional music school. Yeah, there's a lot of great music schools, they do a lot of great work, but when you realize that doing a gig usually means it's a bar gig and there's no monitors, you're probably going to be too loud, you might be playing to an empty room, you might be playing the great club, but it's on a Tuesday night, when on Friday night there's 1,000 people there, but you're playing to nobody. You might be the opening act. You might be the guy that goes on at 1 o'clock in the morning after the 200 people left. You might have to just sing over a band that's too loud. You might have to move your own equipment, how you have to hire and fire musicians, how you have to audition, all these kind of what I call the wood putty that keeps everything together. This is the stuff that people don't really learn, and I think this is the stuff that a lot of people are not prepared for when they get into music.
I think it's, what a lot of us have gone through in this business. It's that University of Hard Knocks.
Yeah.
I've had friends that have gone to music business school at UCLA or Belmont or, fill in the university, but it's not the same thing as being in the trenches.
Yeah.
And that's what you're talking about here.
Right. I personally love the trenches. And, the conversations that I've had with guys like you on great shows like this, and I do mean that sincerely. I love these kind of things. I love the idea that you have a podcast or a television show that you're talking specifically to a person who has done it. Not reading a book, not talking to a professor who's talking about the other people he spoke to. This is not third-hand knowledge. I love the idea of having this, and that's what I'm trying to bring to this video package, where I could have a younger, better-looking model do it. I could have, a voiceover artist with the perfect enunciation do it. I could have a British actor do it with some cool accent, but that would all be a little bit on the synthetic side. I want it to be me talking about my experience in my voice. I do have an attitude. I think it's a good attitude, but I can be harsh and I can be cutting, and I don't really do it for effect. It's really me.
Yeah.
I tell some jokes. I like to think I have a sense of humor. I make fun of myself constantly. I love telling the jokes and the stories that essentially what I'm saying is, this happened to me and this can happen to you.
Right.
The time that I walked on a little stage in Greenwich Village, crowd started clapping, and I took a step and kind of missed the stage, and just, when I say scrape my knee, I tore the skin from my ankle all the way up my shin, and I was wearing white pants, and I'm sitting there playing an acoustic guitar, and the blood is coming through, and you could see it really, and it was my left knee, and I remember I had tears in my eyes. It was incredibly painful, and the club owner afterwards says, "Bill, that was the most emotional performance." And I said, "No, it was pain. It wasn't the pain and suffering in my soul about this beautiful love song. This was physical pain.
It was painful." Yeah.
But these are the kind of things that, it's funny, but the takeaway is, I fell on the stage, I hurt myself, and show's got to go on.
Yeah.
And so I love the idea of those kind of educational teaching moments, and I wanted people to hear it from me. So we put together this thing called the Groove Program. And it essentially covers a lot of those in-between things, how to do a proper audition. One of my favorite topics, and I know it immediately gets under people's skin, is I say, I'd like to show you how to rehearse your band. I'm going to start off by telling you right now you're doing it wrong. I don't care who you are. You're too loud. I'm guaranteeing you, I will bet my bottom dollar that you're too loud in your rehearsal every single night. People need to know that. People need to learn from someone who's been doing it for 42 years. I kind of know what I'm talking about. I do not ever lay claim to being a rock star. I've never sold 1 million records. I don't have a big mansion. I'm one of you. That's my attitude. I don't ever claim to say I can get you from 0 to 100. But I'm sure I can leapfrog 10 or 15 of those steps that you could really just get bogged down in. And I would like to reduce the odds. I'd like to give you much better odds about becoming a working musician and being happy about it and being a successful person. In addition to that, where you face every gig and every rehearsal and every recording session with gratitude, where things will resonate with you, where you'll vibrate, you'll be ready to go, you'll be happy to be there. You'll want to be there. You'll be a good team player. All these things that really go into having a career in music. When I talk about a career, I've been doing it for 42 years. And at this moment, I'm sitting in front of a microphone talking to you about it. So it's not like I'm slowing down anytime soon.
Right.
And I have this new project called the Groove Program, which Jonathan and I are putting together. And it's really quite exciting because on one hand, it's very educational for the other, for the people in the audience. And it's also a bit cathartic for me. It's probably saved me a fortune in therapy. I realize I get in front of a camera and I'm telling some jokes and kind of like what I'm doing here. And all of a sudden I sat there and think about it and I said, yeah, you know what? I did take a whole bunch of skin off my shin in front of 50 people in Greenwich Village, and I was bleeding. And you know what? I did finish the night. I did play the other 20 songs. I didn't go home. I stuck with it. And when I was talking before about, my drummer didn't have a car. Well, either I'm going to go pick him up or we're not doing a gig.
You're not going to have a drummer. Yeah.
So I go do it. I look at the entire spectrum and I talk about it and want to bring this to the audience, and that's the essence of the Groove program. It's all that stuff that they didn't teach you in music school. And my tagline is, I'm one of the few guys that played the Hollywood Bowl and the Holiday Inn in the same week. And I'm hoping people will relate to that and look at me as being, hey, you know, he's approachable. We can call him and ask him, hey, what's the deal with, how do I get a good deal on a guitar? Where can I get a good studio that doesn't break the bank? How do I audition? You know, and the nuts and bolts stuff.
That's what a lot of people don't realize. When I was touring extensively, I came off of a tour where we were on a 20-passenger private plane. Literally went on to a tour, 12-passenger van pulling a U-Haul trailer. Mm-hmm. It happens.
Yes.
And that's the nature of the beast. And if you want to keep working, that's what you got to do.
I'm so glad you said that, because I look at that and I've done the same thing and back and forth.
Yeah.
You know, I've embraced every second of it.
Because you know what? Each gig is just as important.
Yeah.
Each show, every time you get on stage, it's just as important.
And I love that. I really do love that. I've been here in Nashville for a couple of days. I live in Los Angeles. I came here to do this. I'm having as much fun right now as I do having fun on stage. I drive around Nashville to look for a place to have breakfast. I pass 3 places that serve breakfast, and I go in and I say, I actually did a gig here. And that's not kidding. I actually played here. There's a little stage in the corner with a spotlight. I played here a couple of years ago at this little place where I'm sitting there having ham and eggs. I didn't recognize it. It changed names. I walked through this door. So I had as much fun doing that as I had playing the Bridgestone.
Yeah. How can people find you?
Go to Sacramento and make a left, because I live in Los Angeles. That would be
somewhere on Interstate 5.
Yeah.
Or the 101. We're not sure.
It's pretty easy. The name is hard to spell and hard to pronounce, but it's Bill Cinque, Cinque. You can find most of my information at billcinque.com. There's some of my music. There's my book for sale. There's some videos. There's some television shows that I've done. There's excerpts from my book and the book for sale, and pretty much anything you need to get from me you could find at billcinque.com.
Bill, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Don't forget to check out our affiliates, including Lab Canna, fine hemp products since 2014. Click on their link on our website for more information and how to order their product line. If you're interested in getting your music into film or television, click on the Cinque songwriter link on our website. Absolutely the best way to get your songs listened to by top TV and film music supervisors. This is how you can get your songs quickly licensed for your favorite TV shows and movies. Click on our website link to get a free digital copy of Larry Butler's new rule book for singers and songwriters, 101 Ways to Help Improve Your Chances of Success. Also, check out our other affiliate, Music Starts Here. You can find them at musicstartshere.org. Probably the best one-stop shop for the singer, songwriter, or aspiring musician who's relocating to Nashville or wants to. Last but not least, shameless plug for this podcast. Become a YouTube subscriber by going to the Business Side of Music page. You can hear all of our released episodes there. Also, check out our website at businesssideofmusic.com. Follow us on Facebook at the Business Side of Music Podcast and on Twitter at Biz Side of Music.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Los Angeles, California and Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.
Hello, Ma. Hello, Pa. It wasn't much of a fight. I stood like that, but not for long. Quiet.